What happens if I don't want them to hear me?
You can hear the classes.
Oh yeah,
Better, almost better than you can hear this class.
It's
ouch.
Andy, it was our class.
I know whose class it was. Maybe I'll have the same effect out here. All right. Well, we changed the teachers, so you're now stuck with me for a quarter. All right. Oh, we're going to be on the parables this quarter. I think when we came along, we were defining, I think it was cards on defining things. What was a parable? Or what is a parable? Yes. It's something that people here can understand, right? What do we, at that time, there's one on the lost sheep. I'll use it as an example. Today we could use cow. You know, your cow gets out. Do you stop until you find it? Unless she's a habitual offender that keeps getting out and then she gets the one-way ticket to the sale barn, doesn't get to come back again. But we don't do that with people in the church. You know, you have somebody that doesn't show up for a while. What do?
Check on them.
We check on them. We go looking for those that aren't around, or we go out and talk to people. We're looking for the lost. You know, when Christ used that example, he did it in terms that they could understand. He would leave the sheep that you had in a safe place, and you would go out looking for the one that you had lost. All right. Second card would be that how many parables did Jesus teach in total? See, I like this about the sheep, because this is going to make you think. I'm kind of mean that way.
35.
But,
I haven't picked up my card yet.
They're in the classroom. I snuck in there and got them.
oh, so some poor teacher doesn't have a set of cards on. Why was he using parables?
Make it easier to understand.
Make it easier to understand. Get people to understand what what he was talking about.
People would believe that if it made it more believable.
Okay, if I was somebody out there and I didn't believe in what Jesus was saying, would I understand the things he was trying to get at with the parable?
Sure, because it would relate to your peers.
If I was a normal person, but if I'm going against what Christ said, if I'm one of the guys that is wanting to get rid of Christ, the Pharisees, Sadducees, the guys that didn't want to lose power, how did they react to these parables?
Type of figurative language, so it's going to conceal truth,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want to hear it. The ones here, like you're saying.
Yep, it's gonna hide the meaning of it in the parable for them, because are they going to come to Christ and go, hey, you know, you said something about a sheep being lost, but what are you getting at with that? Would be the same instances today as, you know, cows getting out versus people. And those that don't care what Christ says is going to be like, well, he's talking about us. Because if you walk around in a self-centered world, or one that revolves around me, you're not really looking out. So you're not really going to look at that as a fact of, hey, how does this apply to me? All right. And then as far as the Old Testament, somebody want to read, let's look at Matthew 13:35 first, please. Matthew 13:35.
That it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world.
And from there, we're going to go ahead and jump straight over to Psalm 78:2.
I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old.
Okay. What did it do for the Old Testament with the Messiah, or with Christ? What did it confirm? What was Christ going to do when he got here?
The miracles.
Do miracles. Teach. Say the things from old. Bring out things. It fulfilled the Old Testament with what he was saying, with the way he was doing things. It had been foretold that this is, you know, he was coming and he would be doing things like this. And yes, I did find two different things, so I'm sitting here bouncing back and forth some pages. So I have to look at my thoughts. He would be using the things that God had given him to use, using it for examples. All right. The one thing I didn't think about, and the nice part about, you always say that every time you open the Bible, you learn something new, right? So I picked it up, and as I'm studying this, I look at the parables like, okay, he said the parable. The apostles went and got the answers. There are a couple times they asked him what the meanings behind these were. But then you stop and look at that and you're thinking, okay. I didn't comprehend or didn't go into my mind that, hey, those that wanted to learn more would go ask him. I thought they just got the answer, I guess, from that point of view. But other non-Christians, others that were looking towards him, actually went and asked questions more and learned more, got more knowledge out of it. And that was just something I gleaned out of what I'd been studying. It's kind of interesting. Didn't really think about that ahead of time. But the fact that, how do we learn more today? We go to the Bible, we dig into it, and we go from chapter to chapter, book to book, and you'll get the meaning behind what they were saying. Well, at the time, they didn't have that. All they had was a Christ, later on the apostles. So they had to go ask a question in order to get that question answered.
Yeah, the disciples did that, or Luke 13, or Luke, I don't remember, Luke chapter 8, where the parable of sower was that way. They asked and he explained, but he also gave more information.
Mm-hmm. But you see in there where I gave them more information. That's as I said, it took me a little bit to get that to. I'm a little slow in the head sometimes, so I have to think about things.
Aren't we all?
Some of us are hard-headed, but to get it to all kind of come together. I'm trying to make sure I go to the right thing. Let's look at Matthew 13, 11 through 16. I don't think we've read that yet. Eleven through 16, sorry.
He answered and said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear, and shall not understand. Seeing you will see, and not perceive. For the hearts of this people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with the hearts and turn, their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear.
Okay. So in him saying that, he's understanding or explaining to them what the parables mean. And like we've discussed, those that wanted to hear would hear it and understand and learn from it. Those that didn't care what Christ was saying or his authority did not hear the things that they needed to hear. All right. Let's look at Luke 19:10. Luke 19:10.
For the Son of Man is come to seek and save that which was lost.
Of course, I'm the slowest one there. The seek and save is kind of the point of that I was looking at, was the fact that he came to seek and save the lost. What do we seek today?
Same. None of us changed.
No, but the things that we go looking for. We go looking for the lost. We also seek knowledge and seek wisdom, right? We open a Bible. We learn from that. Okay. On to the next card. I wrote this one backwards, so I about gave you the answer before I said the question. What's the smallest seed Mustard seed, right? Of course, she's hogging all the mustard seed we had at home this morning. I'll use that. But a mustard seed is really tiny. And what I gathered out of it, it comes into how big of a tree? They get to about 10 foot tall, which, you know, there's about 8 foot. So it's about 2 foot over my hand. And it envelops, but it starts out as something really small, right? Somebody want to read Matthew 13, 31 and 32, please?
And another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof.
Okay, he's using a mustard seed as an example of the church. And I've got a couple papers there that Tara gave me just before we left, of course. I didn't go looking for them. And it's got some questions I'm going to use here a little bit later on also. But he's using it as the kingdom. And I didn't think about this either a little bit. I mean, I understood some of it ahead of time, as far as the mustard seed being small, the church starting out small, going big. But you think what the church actually started from at the beginning. You know, it was Christ, then the apostles, and then they added on from there. That mustard seed starts out as something really small, and it develops into a tree. And as an outward appearance, the birds of the air could land in the tree, right? And you're starting with something that expands out. What has the church expanded out to, even from Acts till today? I mean, we see some shrinkage today, but I think that's your ebb and flow of things as people seek Christ and then don't seek Christ. But the tree and the branches and the birds are us today. You look at the expansion out over time, and it went from something that was really small to something really big. And it gives you somewhere to go. If you don't have a home, what do you look for? You look for home protections. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who wants to raise their hand today and go outside and land a snowdrift, do we? I mean, I've seen a few dogs that like this kind of weather. They'll go out there and roll around in the snow, be content. Me, I'm looking for somewhere warm. I don't know about anybody else. All right. We've pretty well covered the card, would have been card 4, what the mustard seed becomes. And it is, as I wrote in here, it is bigger than just one person. You think about something, you know, one seed starts out, expands into more than one. What do we know about plants? As far as expansion.
They branch out.
They branch out.
Grow up or grow out.
A tomato plant in the garden expands out, and what's it grow? Tomatoes, right? You go out there in the fall, you kick what's left of the tomato plant down because you're tired of messing with it. But you don't do anything else with it. That tomato plant just sits there and the fruit rots on the ground. What comes up the next spring?
Tomatoes.
Tomato plants, and starts all over again. Because no matter what, if you're switching ends of garden like we do at home, at the wrong end of the garden, there'll be this one plant pops up by itself. And usually I'll let them go if they'll grow. Cool. But it's something that expands. So it gives you a chance to expand out. Well, how does a timber or any tree system start? By one tree, one growth, and then you see it expands out. So it shows growth, bigger than just one person or one thing. All right. Let's look at the, later I'm going to ask you a couple questions on this first because I liked them. In Jesus' comparison, what's he compare heaven to what? Was in Matthew 13:31.
Like a mustard seed.
Like the mustard seed. And he used that example. Let's look at Acts 1:15 real quick. Somebody want to read that?
And in those days, Peter stood up in the midst of the disciples all together. The number of names was about 120, and said,
What had they gone from?
Something very small.
He started out something very small and they gradually grew, right? Somebody want to read Colossians 1:23, please?
23, you said?
Yeah, 23.
If indeed you continue in the faith, grounded and steadfast, are not moved away from the hope of the gospel which you heard, which was preached to every creature under heaven, of which I, Paul, became a minister.
And what had Paul done there and others? It wasn't just Paul at that time. They'd been throughout the world, correct? What did Christ say the word would do? It would go throughout the world. And at this time, it had done that. It's amazing that something so small, and if you look at it from a world perspective, look how far that had to travel around to get to all the people. Okay. Somebody want to read Mark 16:15, please? Don't think we read that one.
And he said unto them, Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.
Now, is he just speaking to a few people, or is he still speaking that today? Today. Do we stop what we're doing? Or what Christ started, I guess? That's really what I wanted to say there. Sounds better. And is actually the right perspective to look at it. Just because they got the command in the first century to go out and do this, some people look at it like, well, that's, it's done. But do we ever quit? Because if we quit, what happens? It dies out. You quit feeding a plant, what happens? It'll die. As the mustard seed, we were just discussing here just a minute ago, into the tree, if it didn't get fed, it would die. The church is the same way. All right. And from the same instance, the birds have home, so we have the church. We have somewhere to go. All right. Can't remember how this question was supposed to be asked. I'm pretty sure I wrote it in the right order. What makes bread rise? Yeast, leaven. What happens if you were mean enough to walk over to somebody's flour container and dump a bunch of yeast in it? And the humidity was just right. And everything was working in your order.
It would overflow out.
It would overflow out. Okay. What happens to yeast on a day like today? Outside, it's not warm enough. It's not going to work. What happens in our house? They about have to stick it on the oven to get it to work this time of year because it's so cold in the house. I like it. Tara does not. I like cold. I'm gonna be a little bit of a whiner. I don't like deathly cold outside. I like cool. I don't like to be hot. So if it's cool, I'm good with it. But if it's 75 or 80 degrees, I'm dying. I'm too fat for that. So I like a cool weather. But for yeast to be spread, it needs to be warm. And of course, with what I was learning from this morning and reading, I was supposed to have an example here for you and show you exactly how this works. But I think we all understand how yeast works. How are we a leaven to the world?
We're supposed to grow, so we should have others.
Well, and I'll use Lily as an example. Our example to her, you accept Christ and you expand, right? You grow, you learn from it, so our numbers expand, right? As we go throughout, we're supposed to go and we talk to people. And then if they believe, they add on. They did the same thing in the New Testament through our reading here in a little bit. I'll use that at the end because it's a lot of verses. But leaven goes throughout the whole container Another thing I learned from reading this morning is, and I didn't think about it at the time, because, well, today you go to the store and get it, right? So you got it all the time, go to the freezer and grab whatever. Well, I didn't think about it at the time. How did they move that stuff around in the Old Testament? Well, you kept some of what you'd used, so you just kept moving it forward, which I'd been around Terry years and years ago, made bread like that, some sort of stuff that she kept.
Friendship,
Yeah.
Friendship bread.
Kept it in the refrigerator and you keep kind of
That's the
messing.
starter of
Yeah, starter. And starter is what I was on to say. I couldn't get it in my head, but that finally came out. But, and I didn't think about it this way, but you would move it with it. Well, that also made me think back to the, no, it just left my head. I hate when that happens. Passover, that's what I was wanting to get to. I was trying to get it out, it just wasn't working this morning. I should, if I'd wrote it down like I did everything else, I'd have been fine. Then I wouldn't be able to read my reading. But the Passover, I didn't think of it, the bread, unleavened bread, right? Well, how hard would that have been to come by? You think about how they move stuff around. If you'd been just moving that around with this, you grind flour up, and I could see that point. But you had leaven at the same time, so it gives you something to think about. But it's just the way that it's spread. Now, that being said, what does leaven do when you spread it the wrong way? What's the world doing today?
They're spreading it now.
The bad. How easy are we touched by that?
Very easy.
What's that leaven do when it touches other flours?
It spreads.
It spreads, it grows into that, right? It grabs on and takes a hold because it's looking for something to eat. It's actually using that and using the properties in it to grow. Because what I was reading this morning is the leaven is more like a fungus type stuff, and yeah, it's kind of
It takes over.
it takes over, but it grows. And an infection does the same thing. So it's something that comes in and takes over. So we want to make sure that what we're using
It's a good yeast.
is the good yeast and not the bad. We want to be able to spread God's word and further his message versus let the world take over and use theirs. All right. How is the church like leaven?
It's the starter. It's the basis to spread.
It's a
Does that
basis.
make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a good example. Any others? We'll get everybody's opinion.
We're supposed to infiltrate the world
Okay.
and spread the gospel. So we're to be like leaven in a sense and affect other people's lives.
So we start out, like Barb said, it's a starter. It gets us going. And then you come into Eric's view of it.
So we need to be like COVID, is what you're saying.
We need to be a lot like COVID. I mean,
That's a great example.
it's,
I get your bread analogy kind of,
But COVID is.
COVID's just.
well, we got Justin with his COVID. Now he's one. Well, although that's kind of a double-edged sword.
I know.
Maybe evil more like.
There you go.
You're probably right.
Yeah, not what did I start?
Don't even have to touch it, it just,
It just goes.
like wildfire, you're probably right.
Well, you've got both examples right there. But the church goes out and it touches individuals. It touches individuals differently, doesn't it? Did all the parables teach the same thing, the same way? No, there was a different meaning behind every one of them, right? He used a different example. It wouldn't mean different like Eric getting up here every Sunday morning and preaching the same thing over and over and over again. Does everybody have the same problems in their life? No, each individual has a
We kinda
different
do.
issue.
We kind of do. It's sin.
Well, we do have that.
That all our problems come off of that.
All of our problems started with one thing, and then it multiplies
They're all
out,
different now, but
and now it chews into different things, a different way of getting at you. Say you overcome one problem, is that the only problem you're ever going to have?
No.
That one thing? No. You're going to have more than one thing arise. And that, again, like your COVID analogy for that, does COVID attack by one thing anymore? How many different variants are we up to now?
I don't know, the next one they make up.
Exactly. So you come up with different things that are always happening. All right, let's look at Matthew 13:33. We're going to look at some ways things happened here.
Another parable he spoke to them, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till it was all leavened.
3 measures, I think I read in here, it was 2 pecks, which I have no idea how big that is, other than it's not small. I mean, it's not huge, but it's not small. And until it was all leavened. So you're talking a big amount by the time it does, because anybody that has made bread knows that if you start out with a little bitty ball, and not that I can cook a lot, but I have seen this done. You know, small ball, bottom of a bowl, and you put a cover over it, and then pretty soon you come back and that whole bowl's filled up. So. I might want to move over here. Somebody's going to die. The luck Justin was just getting is that poor guy when he goes home. It overflows the container. So we all get that. That is the meaning behind this. Let's look at Acts 2:41. We're going to see how the church was in regards to this. Acts 2:41.
Then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls.
How many souls?
3,000.
How big was what was the total number of people around at that time?
A lot more.
A lot. That's the answer I was looking for. I was waiting to see Debbie kind of looked up like, what answer are you wanting? But for the amount of people that were in that place at that time, that's not a very big number. But as we've read, what does leaven do? It spreads, right? So if you take that many people, which you look at Eagleville, Davis, any town up close here, we're kind of small. But you see the effect we have on other people around. You know, we may not be very big here, but from the projects that we do, you do see people out in the community that see that. So we're an example to those around us. And yes, 3,000 is a big number. No, not for the amount of total people in the area at that time. Somebody want to read Acts 4:4, please?
However, many of those who heard the word believed, and the number of the men came to be about 5,000.
Okay. So they had 5,000 more, right? Do we see an expansion? Do we see them leavening the world at that
More than
time?
the time before.
They keep gathering more, right? Acts 5:14.
And believers were the more added to the Lord, multitudes both of men and women.
Okay, so a lot of the Old Testament referred to men. You know, men had the leading role in that. Does that mean men are the only ones that are saved?
I don't think so. I think sometimes men is a term that can be used like mankind,
Mm-hmm.
which encompasses men and women.
So we've all got to be saved, right? Yes. We're all saved, and not just one person or men. You know, the women are secondhand citizens, basically. They're not. They're equal in that regard. Let's look at Acts 6:7.
And the word of God continued to increase, and the number of the disciples multiplied greatly in Jerusalem. And a great many of the priests became obedient to the faith.
What does that show there?
Still growing.
Still growing, but who also was added to it there?
The priests are starting to come out.
The priests. And that's a big step for them because what were they used to doing? I mean, I guess let's back up a little bit. Prior to that, what did the ruling, I'm going to say ruling class, what did the leaders think of Christ?
They didn't want him to be the Savior. They didn't want him to be the Christ.
Very good. So you're going to have a pretty hard train of thought there if you're one of those guys that, hey, this guy is an impossible, he's not, but yet if you actually went and studied, you would realize that, hey, he is who he says he is because of the things he's doing. And as we come along here, now we're seeing priests that believe. So you're starting to get some inroads into those areas that maybe prior to that, they didn't want to believe or didn't want to pay attention to what Christ was teaching or didn't believe him.
Their authority was threatened,
Yeah.
which they were considered above the rest, and that threatened their position in the community, so to speak, and they didn't want to give that up.
Instead of teaching everybody else and everybody being on the
They
same
would
plane,
lose
they
their
wanted.
place in the hierarchy, so to speak.
You look, and I'll use politics here for just a second. What do the guys that want to do that want to do? What direction they want to go? I'll put it this way real quick. Up. They want to be above everybody
I
else.
almost said lie, but.
Well, they'll do whatever
You
they.
said do, and then you.
That's
Well-
What do they want to do?
history.
Lie.
But they'll use every aspect of this, and I guess that's one thing goes against. I get to chewing my teeth on pretty hard, is the fact of people standing on other people to go one direction and that's up. If they're willing to step on your head to go up, why not grab an ankle? They can come back down because to me, I'm not going to use somebody else to go up. We don't stand on other people to go up. Did Christ? Well, we'll go back. We'll drop back down to Christ. What did Christ do?
He became a servant.
He was a servant. He washed feet, right? He gave us the ultimate example there. So he's showing us how we're to be. And the priests to come in and start to believe, you're starting to get that kind of an example. You're getting the realization that, hey, Christ is who he said he was by the examples that he left us. All right. I believe we'll reread Acts 1. Someone want to read that, please? Actually, we haven't read that one yet, I don't think.
Next one was.
Acts 8:1, sorry. Church choked me.
Now Saul was consenting to his death. At that time, a great persecution arose against the church, which was at Jerusalem, and they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles.
All right. Where had they been mainly? Jerusalem. That was their main hub. That's where this started. And excuse me. What happened at that time? It was
Scattered out.
it blew up, right? With persecution. I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, now I'm not. With persecution or with how do I word this? Problems, threats. What happens to things? People scatter, right? I mean, then the sad part is the way the world's going. You used to be able to say this and nobody'd really get nervous. But if they said that there was a bomb in a certain place, what happens to people at that time? Yeah, well, people have taken that literally today, and now that seems to be the big thing. But generally, if you have a problem, you want to run from it, right? So they were getting enough persecution. Saul was persecuting enough people there and other leaders at that time. He wasn't the only one. That it made the Christians and the disciples scatter, right? Made them leave. All right, let's read 8:4.
Therefore, they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word.
Okay, what was that word there about 12 words in? 8 words, sorry.
Everyone
And what they do everywhere?
preached.
Preach, right? What's preaching do?
Spreads.
Spreads the word, right?
Teaches.
So, just like leaven, preaching and teaching, you're going to go out and you're going to preach and teach to the next person. What do once they believe? They go to the next person. We see several instances in the Bible where the Philippian jailer was one. We were talking about that the other day, where him and his household, you start to see more and more of an expansion. And they were going throughout the world. Somebody want to read Romans 1:16 for me, please? Romans 1:16.
For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek.
Okay, where did it start? Where did the word of God start there? Where did the church start? Jerusalem. And who is the second wording in that?
Judea.
Judea, Greeks, Gentiles. Spread out, right? Didn't just stay with the Jews. If it stayed with the Jews, what hope would the Gentiles have had at that time? You know, what do we look back in time before the Jews? And what do we see with the people? A lot of times in their view.
With Jews,
Just with the Jews.
when I think of that, I think of kind of like a closed society.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is the fact that they were like a narrow band of people, or God's people.
It's more blood to them than belief.
Exactly. And how are we supposed to do it? Is it just because I was born in the church, I'm saved? You know, I don't have to do anything? There's nowhere in the Bible that says that, is there? Is there anywhere in there that says that, you know, once I'm saved, I can sit back and put my feet up, I'm good? No, we have to work for it, right? We're out here not to just loaf and sit around because we're saved, or to get out. What do you think the biggest problem with the Jews were at the time that Christ was coming along? I'm saved because I don't have to do anything, and we're better than everybody else because we're God's people. The attitude, the arrogance comes into play there, and we want to be better than everybody else because I'm a Jew, I'm God's people, I'm saved, I don't have to do anything. Christ came in, he was a servant, he was an example to us, and by teaching through parables, he was teaching the people that wouldn't have necessarily been schooled per se. Because if you're using an example, I'm using an example, everybody, say somebody says fire, we all run out that back door, and there's some water out there today when we came in. How many of us are actually going to make that corner and go down that ramp before we're shoved through the fence on the south side? Just as a way of looking at it, everybody knows if you step on something slick, what happens? You're going to wipe out, fall down. Now, as a kid, you know, the girls even, they can go out there, they can fall down, and they're fine. I go down, and I fall down, I'm going to be slower than Eric is on a good day today, getting back up. Because it just doesn't work like it used to. You know, the hips, the back, everything, joints, I'm fragile. But we understand a thought like that versus some scientific person come in here and give you the theory and I see I'm not very good at this. I'm pretty simple. But a higher train of thought of why that's froze than just saying it's you know, -4 outside, it's cold, there's water, it was wet, now it's froze. You know, an ice rink, you step on it, you fall down. So, are there any other questions for today? Any comments that I may not have covered? If not, we can answer them Wednesday. Thank you.
Rusty,
It was good, Andy.
you're just fine, man.